getting to know Jesus through one another. You're listening to Meet Fern Creek, brought to you by Fern Creek Christian Church. Hey, welcome to another episode of Meet Fern Creek. My name is Matt, and we do this about once or twice a month just so you can get to know some amazing members of our congregation. And today, we actually have a staff member here with us. His name is Mike Cook. He is the Hispanic Minister here at Fern Creek Christian Church, and he's had a pretty exciting life. And so, not only do I want to get to know him better, I want you to get to know him better. And so, Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm really happy to be here. It's great to be working here in Fern Creek. And I kind of got my start in this whole idea of working with Hispanics back in when I went to college. I met a lot of Spanish speakers on campus and just started saying one-word greetings to them and asking them to help me learn a few words. And then I ended up on the mission field in Ecuador for 15 years, working with a team of church planters.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so then I ended up here.
Church planting.
Yes.
What is that?
Well,
I hear that's a tricky, scary, difficult business. It is hard to plant a church.
Well, yeah, it takes time, and so we were there, and the team got about 6 churches launched, and there's more being started even now. Some of the people are still there, and they're still starting other churches, and actually some of the churches that were started are heading up the planting of new congregations. That's
amazing. So, did I hear this correctly? You didn't grow up speaking Spanish.
That is correct, right.
So you've learned this when you were in college. You started learning words.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I was 18. I started learning, I just learned, hey, how do you say this? I would point to an object and, like a spoon or a fork, and I'd say, how do you say this? And they would tell me what it means, how to say it. And I try to, write it down on a card and practice it and,
So that gives me hope then.
Oh, yeah.
If I ever wanted to learn a language, I'm not
Absolutely.
too old.
No, you've got plenty of time.
Wow.
Yeah.
That amazes me because I did not know that about you.
Yeah, I was 18 when I started learning Spanish.
Oh,
yeah.
Man. And so where did this heart for missions come from? So it sounds like you were around church planners, you were around people who were mission oriented.
Okay, not initially. So I would say that's all because of church camp. Okay. Church camp, yes. So, church camp is a great thing. You go there as a teenager and they instill a vision to say, hey, how many of you would like to go into full-time Christian ministry? So at the time I thought, I think I want to go into full-time Christian ministry. I don't know what, but something, So I decided to go to Bible college. That's the next step. And at Bible college one week, I was at Pacific Christian College, which is now called Hope International University in California, Fullerton, California. Nice. And one week they had something called Global Emphasis Week. And someone came and spoke about missions, and that's where I caught the vision to go to a different country.
Oh, wow.
And so, I just continued investigating that, and at the same church camp that I went to as a teenager, I went back as a college student. They had a thing called School of Missions. It was a week of just missionaries speaking and giving their presentations, and lots of FaceTime in the cafeteria. You could talk to them as much as you wanted. So I had my notebook, and I interviewed every single one of them.
Really?
Yeah, trying to get as much information as I could.
That's amazing. Yeah. It sounds like you're somebody who can testify. I like to call it that one moment experience.
Oh, yeah.
I had it at a spiritual retreat in college, like that one moment that you never forget. And a lot of people can testify like, oh, I heard the voice of God say, go. I heard this. To me, it was feeling something, like something in my body was like unresolved. Like I was shaking with excitement, and I was like, I'm going to go get baptized. It was the end of a worship set at a student retreat for CSF at UK, and they were singing songs, and I was just shaking like this. I was trying to lift my hands, and my hands were doing this. I turned to the friends next to me. I said, I think I need to go get baptized. And so is that kind of like what that moment was for you when you were hearing about global impact?
Well, it was exciting because the person who was speaking said, "It's our world to win." And he was emphasizing the receptivity of people in other countries. And there were some students there that were, kids of missionaries. And I talked to them a little bit and said, "Hey, what can you tell me about this?" And they said, "Oh, people are just so receptive in our country where we're from, and they're just responding." And I thought, wow, that would be so cool, to go somewhere where people are really receptive. That was something that initially attracted me. And then also just being able to know, okay, so this helps define exactly what I'm going to go for, because I knew I wanted to go into full-time ministry, but I didn't know exactly what. I didn't know if I wanted to go into youth ministry or maybe Christian education or maybe pulpit pastoral ministry. I wasn't sure. This helped clarify and say, well, at least you're thinking now foreign missions, and I was able to narrow it at that far and keep proceeding forward.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So at that point, I decided to be a missions major. They had an actual, you could get your bachelor's degree in missions, cross-cultural missions. So that's what I did.
Well, that's really neat. Will you talk to us about, I think sometimes we get confused in the church world, and we may just need clarity about what it means to be a missionary where you are, someone who tries to make disciples in your own context and community. And then there's missions that looks like going overseas and going to a foreign country and trying to plant churches. And what are the big differences between those? And how would you advise people like, well, I want to be a missionary, but I don't feel called to get up and move and go overseas? Talk to us a little bit about the differences there.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's very similar. The very first contacts that we made when we arrived in Ecuador were our next door neighbors, just getting to know them. And one time they had us over for lunch. And of course, the food was really different. And for me, it was hard. For my wife and I, it was hard to deal with. We had a difficult time. I was able to eat it, and my wife kind of, without them noticing, she scraped her plate off onto mine after I cleaned my plate. So then I had to finish the rest of what she didn't want to eat, and it was different, And so we were very happy that they invited us over for lunch, but there was a challenge. But again, the issue is just getting to know people. In this case, we got to know our neighbors. And so get to know your neighbors, get to know people. Something that happens in other countries is, because it's hot and they don't have, at least where we were, they don't have air conditioning. Everybody's out, and you can go outside and meet people all over the place. Whereas here, people come home, they close the garage door, they go inside, they turn on their cable TV, and you don't see them. So that's one of the challenges. That's more challenging here in that respect than it is in many countries, depending on which country you're talking about, which in my case, it was a third world country. Ecuador, the largest city, Guayaquil, and it was very hot, and so a lot of people would be out on the street, in the park, all over the place. You could just walk around and meet people. It was very easy.
Wow. So you're saying maybe being a missionary is harder here in America than it is in another country. It
can be. I mean, it depends on what country we're talking about. At least here we have some freedom, freedom from, being disturbed if we want to have our worship here and we're not being spied on by the police and so forth. Whereas in other countries, not where I was, but in other countries, you have to be very careful. It may be restricted in the sense of legality. They would try to crack down on anybody sharing Christianity with other people, and so that's not what my experience was, but it's what some missionaries are currently experiencing, and they have to be very careful. However, they are also seeing fruit, and that's a good thing. It's God works through and around all of these barriers, and if He can do that in other countries, certainly He can do that here.
Yeah. What are some of the stories you're hearing from other countries? I know you're heavily involved with Team Expansion,
right?
And so I'm sure you're hearing stories of what missionaries are doing around the world. Do you have any stories?
Well, just in a general sense, I can say that Team Expansion has many, many missionaries all over the world, and many of them are seeing circumstances by which it might be difficult at first, in the sense that maybe the government isn't sympathetic, but they do make friends and they do lead people to the Lord. And without going into specifics, I mean, there's just a lot of fruit being born in other countries. And of course, we can't talk about which ones those are, but there is a lot happening, and it's exciting, and it's obviously because of God. It's not something that the missionaries are somehow super intelligent or super persuasive or anything like that. It's the Holy Spirit convicting hearts, and people are responding.
That's really neat, and I hope that encourages you, church, that the money you give here to Fern Creek and the money you give to missions, it really is bearing fruit, and you don't always get to hear the stories. We try to do that every month here at Fern Creek, tell you about a missionary we're supporting as a church and bring them in and have them talk, and I just hope you understand that your generosity is helping make that happen. And so feel free to go to our website and give more if that's what God calls you to, and God's doing amazing things.
And you can find out more about those and even have those prayer requests brought right into your email inbox. All you have to do is go to teamexpansion.org, and there's a place to sign up for prayer alerts, and you can have weekly prayer alerts or even daily prayer alerts. And in those, there will be a description of what's going on. Now, you won't go into detail about where necessarily, but they will say, pray for Edward in country Z, and talk about what's going on and why you should pray for Edward in country Z, for example.
That's great. Yeah, I really recommend that. And tell us a little bit more. I really liked what you said, that missions, being a missionary, is like the focus is getting to know your neighbors. And I feel like in America, we have so many contexts.
Yes.
We have work, we have play, we can have church, and then when you have kids, I don't know what this is like, but then you have your kids' school, their play, their extracurricular activity, and you're in so many different contexts. And so talk to us, what are effective ways to really get to know your neighbor? I know you listed one was meals. Is there anything else we can do to really get to know our neighbors to make disciples?
Yeah, I think initially just trying to strike up a conversation, not be pressured to go immediately to spiritual topics, but try to strike up a conversation, get to know them as people, and find avenues of connection, some way to further that relationship, to further that contact, and have maybe a chance to meet again. We recently here at Fern Creek, we had an outreach at some of the schools, and the outreach team went into different schools, and one of the schools was Fern Creek Elementary. And while we were there, we were serving breakfast to the teachers and staff, and one of the people that came through to grab some donuts and have something to eat was someone who we could tell was probably maybe from another country. Uh-huh. And so one of our members of our outreach team, who also speaks Spanish, kind of clued in and just kind of started speaking Spanish. And sure enough, they made a connection. And these two ladies were talking, and they kept talking for about 20 minutes. And by the end, they said, "Hey, Mike, can you tell this lady about what we have to offer at Fern Creek, because she's interested and she might want to come here." And she has some family members that she wants to bring as well. And so we gave her the information right there. And, those kinds of things can happen. You just look for opportunities, and we were not expecting that we would be having a potential person show up here as a result of giving donuts to the teachers at Fern Creek Elementary, but that's what we saw, and so we'll see what happens there. But that was a great opportunity just to meet somebody right there at that moment.
That's such a cool story.
Yeah.
Man, and it's really moments like that. They sound so simple, but they make such an impact. Like someone from our community is going to visit our church because of a conversation.
Yeah, this was just 2 days ago that this happened.
And I would describe myself as more, y'all might disagree, but I describe myself as an extroverted introvert. Okay,
yeah.
So I can be extroverted if I have to be.
Right.
But man, when I get that alone time at home, I am thriving. I'm in great shape and great spirits. And so for me, conversation, I have that extroverted piece where I can have conversations. But for introverted people or more shy folks, conversation can be this huge mountain. And I just want to encourage you. I think it's the art of asking questions. And feel free to chime in on this. The ability to ask good questions will take you really far. Nobody wants to just listen to a monologue about your life and what's going on. And so the pressure is not all on you. But if you can have 4 to 5 questions in the back of your mind, and something like, what have you done today? Or what are your plans this weekend? Simple questions that can easily strike up conversation and allow somebody to answer and then for you to respond. I don't know if you're extroverted or introverted or how you feel about striking up conversations, but that can be hard. Yeah,
I mean, I'm kind of like what you described. I mean, I can be extroverted when the time calls for it, but I do like to have that downtime and that alone time, and I thrive. Just like you said, all I need is a book and a cup of coffee, and I'm in good shape.
In that hotel room we were talking about.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so I just want to encourage you, maybe think of, as you seek to have conversations with people, 4 or 5 questions that someone can respond to, and you can respond back and begin dialogue. And one of those questions, Renee Boschain told me about this. Sometimes one of the best questions you can ask someone, it really never offends anyone, is how can I pray for you? How can I best pray for you this week? It doesn't really matter what walk of life someone's from. That's a good question. Even if they aren't a Christian or go to church, they'll be like, well, that's really sweet. They want to know how they can help and pray for me, and they'll usually respond anyways. And so just want to encourage you with that. And now I'm going to shift gears really hard.
Yeah.
Tell us about the Hispanic Ministry here at Fern Creek. Most of our congregation sees the Hispanic Ministry sitting in the back, headphones on. We sing a worship song in Spanish every once in a while. But what really goes on in our Hispanic Ministry? I think you guys will be surprised.
Yeah, we actually have a service on Sundays during the third service, 11:15, in Spanish, with music in Spanish and the teaching in Spanish, everything, and that is in the basement. And so, but what I encourage people to do, I encourage them to come to both the 10 o'clock, which is when they can listen in to what's going on through their wireless headsets. And I'm in a booth speaking into a microphone, relaying everything that's happening, but I'm just, interpreting it into Spanish there in real time so that they can hear what's happening. And a lot of times, they're very encouraged, even during the songs. I'll even tell them what the lyrics are, what's up there on the screen. They can choose to either listen to what I'm saying or just turn it down and sing along. That's their option. But when it comes time for the message, that's where they definitely want to tune in, and I can give them that information. In addition, we also meet on Wednesday nights, and we have another meeting in homes on Friday nights, which is a great time because we have a meal as followed by lots of great conversation and a Bible study as well.
That's awesome. And one of the things I love about your folks is, one, that they come to service with us. I don't know if you can imagine this. being in a service where English isn't the main language, but you go in there to worship so that you can be a part of that church body. I think that is incredible. I really, really do. And then the second thing I love is from your group is that you guys really do life together, like Wednesday, Friday, Sunday.
Yeah.
And it probably doesn't feel like a burden to people, like, oh, I got Wednesday and Friday and Sunday. That's probably just like, yes, I want to see my friends at Fern Creek.
And we're in touch all week long, daily, many times a day. We have a group text that everybody's on, and we're constantly posting prayer requests and uploading things that we think are encouraging, a devotional thought or a video, and we're just always saying hi to everybody. Maybe if it's someone's birthday, everybody piles on and says happy birthday to that person. And it's a group text that we're all on, and so we hear from each other all day long, every day.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I want to encourage you guys, if you're not already in a life group, man, we recommend that, because there's so much more to experience here at Fern Creek when you're in a group. There's more joy, there's more community, there's more Bible study. There's so much more for you in a group setting. And so we love that you're coming on Sunday. Keep coming on Sunday. We love it. But we want to invite you to more. And that happens in a group context. And you get stories like this. Imagine 10, 15 people from your group wishing you a happy birthday from Fern Creek. And in order to be known, you kind of have to put yourself out there and want to be known. And so get involved in a group, and I promise you won't regret it. And for those already in groups, the Hispanic Ministry is something to aspire to, where it's not just a task every Wednesday night or a task on Sunday mornings to get together. Man, it is the joy of fellowship that we have. Like, we want to reach out to each other. We want to stay connected. And you set the culture of your group. And so if your group isn't like that, it's not bad. You're not doing it wrong, but there's even more for you when you're in a group. And I'm sure you have so many stories of, and I guess I'm talking from a pastor's perspective here, how that takes the pressure off of you as the minister of that group when your group is having fellowship and encouraging each other.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, they encourage one another, and they'll call each other up and encourage one another, when one of them is going through a struggle, and so it's good. I don't have to be the only one that they call on to ask me, hey, would you pray for me? But they can call on any number of people and ask for prayer, and they often just ask the group for prayer, and everybody says, yes, I'll pray, and then one after the other, and on our little app that we use to maintain contact with each other. And so, yes, that's true.
Yeah, and how did that culture develop? Were there certain people, or did you kind of set that tone as the leader? Like, hey, we're gonna do life together. Latin Americans are very outgoing and friendly and they very sociable. And, one of the things I really enjoy also is, we end right at 12:15, which is exactly 1 hour from the time we start. And that's so that the people with children in the education wing can go pick up their kids, but those that don't have to leave right away to go pick up their kids, they'll just hang out and talk for a long time, and I always try to not have anything I need to leave for right away, because I want to be able to stay and just talk, and we can all just hang out and talk for 20, 25 minutes after we have technically closed the meeting or ended the meeting. Mm-hmm. And that's just because of that social contact and that very outgoing nature of the people. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. And I appreciate you coming on this podcast, Meet Fern Creek, to tell us more about the Hispanic Ministry and yourself. And I encourage you, man, if you haven't met Mike, you need to meet him. and thank him for everything he does for our church and for missions worldwide. And just want to encourage you today, like, our church is bigger than you really think it is. And so get to know people, really introduce yourself to people, get involved in a group, serve somewhere. There's so much more for you in your relationship with Jesus when you're willing to take the best next step for yourself. And so I'm glad we got to hear your story.
Yeah, and if you have any friends or neighbors or coworkers or anyone that you know that speaks Spanish, feel free to invite them to our group. And you're invited as well. If you want to come down and experience what we're doing and practice your Spanish, or even if you have no background, just come in and listen to a foreign language for a while, feel free to come join us.
Yes, I love it. And then you may notice this little paper, shameless plug here, since we're on like a podcast show. Like, I'm like leaning on the table like I'm a professional here. Hey, worship night, May 22nd at 6:30 p.m. You're not going to want to miss this. We're going to talk about what it means to make disciples. And you're like, that sounds kind of like a class. No, it's not like a class. We want to inspire you and ignite a fire of passion within you so that you like, yes, I'm going to run through this wall and make disciples. And so please allow us the opportunity to serve you and inspire you. May 22nd, worship night called Send to Me, 6:30 here at Church in the Sanctuary. And thanks again, Mike, for coming on the show.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
Grace, peace. See you Sunday.
Gracias, paz, y nos vemos el domingo.
Well, thanks for listening to our show, Meet Fern Creek. I want to encourage you to download our Fern Creek Christian Church app today, available on the App Store and on Google Play. You can worship with us this Sunday at 8:45, 10, or 11:15. See you there.